Okay, so recording has started. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this evening's session. It is with Birmingham and Solihull Careers Hub, and it's called Being Prepared for Your Future. So we've asked the questions in the poll. Have you got a plan in mind as to which industry you'd like to work within? So 33% said yes, 25% have said no, 42% not sure. So you're in the right place to find out the answers. And then we've asked, how confident are you about your future? 5 being completely confident, obviously 1 not so confident. We've got 17% on 1, 25% on 2, 50% are a 3, and only 8% on 4, and no 5s. So like I said before, we have got some work to turn this around, and hopefully you will see from the information that you guys are going to get tonight that you'll be able to make good decisions, and you'll see that the future is actually looking quite good. So let's do that. Let's move forward. Who are we and why are we here? Well, my name's Max. I work for a company called Pathway CTM. I help host tonight's session. So I'm just a conduit. I'm the in-between. I make sure everything runs smoothly. I look out for your questions. I look out for anything in the chat box. And that's what I'm here for. My job at Pathway CTM is I'm an outreach manager. So I spend a lot of time going into schools virtually, helping young people take control of their future, whether it's about writing CVs or understanding what their future options are. That's what I do on a day-to-day basis, and I have got experience previously from Pathway CTM working in early careers recruitment. So this is an industry I've worked in for quite a while. So if you have got questions around that, don't be afraid to ask them, because you've got a panel of experts who are going to be able to answer those questions, and myself as well. Today we're going to hear from Lana from Europa, Kevin from Youth Promise Plus, and then we've got Jaguar Land Rover, and we've got Me PLC as well. So we've got a few people to hear from, few videos to watch in terms of presentations with lots of information. Remember, you can ask questions. Tonight's session has been put together by Mike and Rob from Birmingham and Solihull, and I'd like them to introduce themselves briefly. So good evening, Mike, and good evening, Rob. How are you guys?
Evening, everybody. Just to introduce myself quickly, my name is Mike Pipe. I'm the Senior Enterprise Coordinator from the Careers and Enterprise Company. So I represent the Birmingham Careers Hub. This is our third webinar, looking at providing students and parents and teachers with some more information about where they can get support, the pathways that are out there, and also support with making that step. So this presentation is all about asking questions to employers and finding out what employers really want. So if you're in that position where you want to apply for a job, or you're worried about applying for a job, this is the ideal time to ask the question. Now, in a 2-hour webinar, we can't represent every single sector. We've got some really important people to talk to and ask the question to. If you've got any questions, any worries about applying for jobs or interviews, assessment centres, application forms, this kind of thing, please ask them. We've got plenty of people on the line to actually answer those questions for you. But really hope you find this useful. And there's obviously a bank of these resources that we've now created that we can make sure you can access through Pathway CTM. But I really hope you find tonight's information useful. Rob?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. So my name's Rob Reynolds, and I similarly work alongside the Careers and Enterprise Company. I'm the hub lead for the Solihull Careers Hub. And just really to reiterate what Mike said, please use the opportunity to ask questions. We're here to try and provide you with some information and some hope and some help. So yeah, make sure you ask us questions. Thanks a lot.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that. Great introduction. So hopefully you guys are ready for this evening. To communicate, like we've said, you can ask questions, you can communicate with us. There is a chat box. We'll be putting links and we'll put information in there. And you've already seen there should be a message in there from Tracy about what her role is and how she can help you guys this evening. The Q&A box, if you have got questions, please put them in the Q&A box as we go through the session. With that, with the Q&A box, we may not answer the question immediately, but we will get to it when it is appropriate, and we'll be able to see them, and we will answer as many as possible. Okay, if you feel confident, you want to raise your hand and unmute your microphone and speak, go for it. But we understand that that's not always anybody's preferred option. So without further ado, I'm going to stop talking. You know how to communicate. Let's get going, and I'm going to introduce Lana from Europa. So good evening, Lana. Welcome.
Hello, so my video should be working. You can all hear me good. I'm seeing some nods. Good evening, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here in front of you virtually. I just wanted to start off by introducing myself really and giving you a bit of a background. So I am an early career talent manager. What does that mean? It means that I, on a normal day and in the normal world, go to schools and colleges and I recruit young people, like many of you in the audience today, and introduce them to the world of logistics and the opportunities that we have that would be suitable for you. So I'm really used to speaking to young people like yourselves, people that aren't quite sure what they want to do, where they want to go. Some people who don't even know what logistics is, but I can talk to you all about that. And are just at that really early, nervous, daunting, but super exciting stage of their life and that transition from school or college into sort of the big wide world. My background has been working for university providers. So I used to be in a widening participation scheme and career support at Loughborough and Aston in Birmingham. So we moved to Birmingham. I have been in the sector for about 8 years, and then I stepped into recruitment and working in the early career format. I also did work with schools around the East Midlands on the Ofsted Careers Gatsby Benchmarks provision, which is essentially making sure that school career leaders have the support that they need to be able to make sure that young people like yourselves have the information. So when I was sort of talking to Mike about doing this session, I tried to put myself back in your guys' shoes really of when I was 18 years old. What was it that I was thinking about? And I was really, really keen on being a beautician. So imagine beauticians here going into HR and recruitment all the way over here. Couldn't be more different. And I wasn't interested in university. I wasn't particularly interested in my A-levels, but I continued to do them because my parents really and thankfully encouraged me to finish. And I completed my A-levels and hadn't applied to university. So I started doing a job in a wedding planners, a bit of sort of admin work. And I thought, oh, this is great earning money, but I want to get out of my little village, which I grew up in, a place called Bicester, not too far from Birmingham. And I wanted to try something new. So I applied to university on my gap year, went to Aston University where I did a sandwich year, a year in industry. And it all worked out great for me. But it just shows how one moment I thought I wanted to do one thing, which was beauty therapy, and then I ended up actually opening my eyes a little bit to see what else is out there. And who knows, the thing about having a portfolio career is changing things up and mixing things around. I might go back to that dream one day. So it really is sort of normal and usual for you not to have a great idea of what you're going to do. So Europa itself, talking about the company I work in now and back in the future, is a logistics company. And essentially, logistics is moving something from point A over to point B. And that could be point A being in London and point B being in Munich in Germany. It really just depends on where you need something. And what I would say for me, logistics was not an area I ever saw myself going into. I was actually working in a different company, working with schools, and Europa had come in to do a really similar presentation like this, met me and offered me this opportunity for early career talent manager, which was a new role, which was fantastic. But my first thought was, I don't really understand logistics. So the different aspects of Europa are your sort of road, moving one thing to another via road. We do air and sea. We do something called event logistics, which is show freight. And if any of you have heard of Comic-Con or Marvel, we actually in a normal world every year move all of Marvel's goods. So we had in the warehouse this humongous Hulk life-size sort of memorabilia. We moved that all over to New York for them, set up an event. We do that in the NEC in Birmingham for many companies. So we do that show freight side. And then lastly, warehousing as well. We have the largest warehousing facilities within the UK. We've just actually spent 60 million on a new site in Corby, which is Northamptonshire. So that's kind of logistics in a nutshell. Some of our biggest customers are actually Adidas, Michael Kors. So in that picture there, that's our Corby site. We have a whole section of just Michael Kors handbags, girls, and trust me, it's my favourite place to be. And we have 16 locations all over the UK and Ireland that we're recruiting in, and the Birmingham one is Minworth. So we have a site in Minworth that does road, air and sea and warehousing, and they are a really, really great bunch there. I'd say the team is probably about 20 people in the sales team, headed up by a guy called Jamie, who's our branch manager. and he trains people right from the early career stage and brings them through the business. We always sort of talk about growing our own talent. We like to get people in early and have them stay with us and really, you know, grow and nurture that. And that's our CEO, Andrew Baxter's sort of thoughts and dreams there. So if we could pop on to the next slide, or is that something I can do? Brilliant. I wanted to talk to you specifically about one of the options that we do have, which is the Rapid Career Development Scheme. And this might be applicable to some of you on the call today. And that is for 18 to 21-year-olds who are looking for a sort of unique scheme, and it's actually a sales scheme, and it's progressive as time goes on. So we offer 22,500 as a starting salary, so that's around £1,570 a month. A company car, because we do ask you to travel, not excessively. I'll go into that a little bit earlier. And you can actually earn extra commission once you meet your targets. And the way we kind of describe the scheme is, if you are interested in customer service and sales, it's an account manager program. So when people graduate from university, they quite often go into account management. An account is simply a customer. So you are a customer manager and you deal with income and sales for the business. So if you could skip to the next slide. I wanted to talk to you about the kinds of people that we've had here at Europa. So we've actually got Abby, who's from Birmingham, and she was 19 when she first started with us, and she actually started in a customer service role. She's 23 now, and she's a senior account manager. So she's at the later part of the sales scheme, and she is really, really enjoying the opportunities that it has given her. She feels that in terms of her progression, she's been able to progress at a fast rate. Financially, she's in a really comfortable position. She's managed to go up a few pay grades, and that's been fantastic for her. But most importantly, her level of responsibility. And she talks about how no 2 days are the same for her. And the team are just so tight-knit in Birmingham. So there's probably, like I said, around 20 from the age of around 18 to 30. And they all work together to kind of meet those branch targets and just really complement each other in terms of their skill set. We've then got Matt, who's slightly different. So I always say you never know where your career is going to take you. He went to university twice before he decided it wasn't for him. He went to a university in Newcastle, which was just too far away from home for him. And then he went to a university in Bristol nearer his home, but it just wasn't for him. He wanted to get out there and really be experiencing the opportunities of the working world. And now he feels like he's making those commercial decisions day to day. He actually manages 2 people now. So he's right at the end of the scheme. He is a senior account manager, managing 2 people, and he's hoping to become a branch manager or go into other areas of the business. We always say if you can complete the sales scheme, then the windows of opportunity are open for you. Like I said, we've got many divisions in the company, and that's hopefully what Matt is hoping to do. So if we could click to the next slide, I just wanted to talk to you all a little bit about what kind of people that we look for. Is that okay just to click on to the next slide, or is it not quite communicating?
No, I'm not sure if the next slide is actually your one, because the next one is a little video from the NCS.
Oh, it might have been lost in translation, but don't worry, I can talk you through. I always say to people when I'm interviewing and attracting young people into the business, and the same from when I used to work in university setting, probably seeing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of young people, the one thing I would say is, we can teach you everything you need to know about logistics, or whether it's, you know, coming into university and settling into that lifestyle. We can teach you those things of, you know, where to go, what to look for, what's the appropriate etiquette, how to behave, what to do on a day-to-day in terms of logistics, the geographies, what's imports and exports, what's quoting and pricing, all of those things. But we can't teach attitude. And attitude is really, really important and the key success factor for us. If you're willing to learn and willing to take on an opportunity and give it your everything, so that's engaging in it, working hard, asking questions, having a positive can-do attitude, working well with others, we can make sure that everything else falls into place for you and you've got every single resource needed. We offer some really good sales training. We have a great learning and development department that are able to support you every step of the way. We're really interested in your future. But the key component and all we really need from you is literally that attitude and the right uptake from day one, really. So if you are interested in this opportunity, we've got a website, europaworldwide.com. It's www.europa-worldwide.com. We have a range of opportunities, but this one is with us until April. If you go on and fill in one of our application forms, there's also a personality profile quiz as well, which just gives you some scenario questions and a real feel of what it is like to be working with us day to day. Then that's the way to apply. And I think the last thing I want to say to you guys is, at this point, you might not know what you want to do, but every day you'll learn something that you don't want to do. And that might be by filling in an application form on a website. It might be by having a telephone interview. It might be by looking at the job description and thinking that's not for me. But I would definitely put myself, if I were you, in every situation to give something a try, give it an attempt and give it an application and just see what doesn't feel right. And then hopefully you'll be on the path to what does feel right.
Perfect. Thank you, Lana. I think there's some really important aspects that you've covered there when you think about it. And I suppose, remember the poll at the beginning said that some people, well, people weren't 100% confident about the future. And that could be a couple of different things at the moment because of what is going on. But it is important to see that there are opportunities still available, right? Like you said yourself, you didn't see yourself going into logistics, but logistics is wholly important because basically everyone uses logistics, right? And you've got some big
accounts. Definitely. And I think I'd echo saying it is a really difficult time for you guys at the minute with COVID-19, and you're going to be the most resilient bunch of young people for your time. And what I would say is, you know, I only finished university 10 years ago, but I felt like there wasn't apprenticeships or traineeships or school leaver programs out there when I finished school. And you guys have such a diverse range of options, and I'm really envious of that. And I think just try and look on that positive side and think there are opportunities out there and there are a range of things you can do.
Interesting that you said about resilience and how resilient this this crop of students will be, because resilience is one of the things that has been shown to be really important and one of the skills that that many companies look for. And you kind of referenced it in your presentation. It's not always about knowing exactly which path you want to take, but it's about knowing what you are good at. So therefore, it's understanding what your strengths are, right? So would you say that students need to really understand their strengths and then base their search upon that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, a massive part of our role is being able to pick up the phone to a stranger and say, you know, hi, I'm Lana, I'm calling from Europa, how are you? And to some people that is so daunting. So I think it's strengths and preferences. If you know something isn't going to be right for you, then that cancels that one out. But if you know a strength or even something that you want to do one day is an area of development for you, it's just having that awareness of what you do like, what you don't like. And does that mean that you'll never like it or you need to work on it? It's kind of that idea there.
Perfect. So there's already a lot of things for you guys to think about. Look at that. There was somebody did ask a question in the chat box earlier, and I will say it out loud. And it was about I believe their son wasn't able to make it back from college yet to see the start of this. It is being recorded, so it will be available afterwards. And that's the beauty of our recording, that this will be available for any teachers out there, and you want to use this resource in a classroom. Any parents that want to show this or share this with other parents, use it, because the recording will be available afterwards. So don't worry about that, guys. So that's brilliant. Keep thinking of questions that you want to ask Lana or anybody else on our panel. Now we're going to move on. Thank you very much for that, Lana. We're going to move on to a quick video from the NCS. So let's see if I can do this transition nice and smooth.
If you are under 18, you cannot watch the following.
No, actually, we can't. Oh no, you just can't grow up. No, we can.
In other news, teens can't change anything. No, we can. Our planet! Our future!
You can't get this job yet.
No, I think you finally can.
Boy, you can't stand there.
No, we can. I'm just waiting for our mate check.
Look, can you hear me? No. You can't go away this summer.
No, we can.
Skirts? They just can't.
No, we can.
You can't do this. You can't do this. You can't do this. No, you can.
You can't write a book.
No, we can.
You can't wear that.
No, we totally can. And I'm going to show you how
No, we can.
Search NCS for the summer that turns no you can't into no we can.
Right, perfect. You've seen that. It's from the NCS. That's a nice little taster for you. You're going to be hearing a lot more about that in your school. So pay attention in class. You'll see this coming round and there'll be a lot of information about it. Let's move on now. And we're going to watch a presentation, and it's from Kevin and it's from Youth Commerce Plus. So let's get started on that.
If you are under 18.
Hello, my name's Kevin Clark and I work on the Youth Promise Plus programme, which helps young people aged 16 to 29 in the Birmingham and Solihull area get into employment, education or training. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about how to start your job search. This is what we'll be covering today. Exploring different ways of finding work, understanding the tools you can use to help find jobs, and keeping track of your job search. There are several different stages in your journey to a job. It all begins with completing a great application or sending an attention-grabbing CV. This in turn leads to getting shortlisted for interview, succeeding in that interview, and getting an all-important job offer subject to references. But how do you find a job you're interested in? These are some of the factors to consider when choosing which jobs to apply for. Your skills. Have you got excellent communication skills? Can you work well in a team? Are you great at problem solving? Can you fix or repair things with your hands? Your interests. Do you like helping people? Are you artistic or creative? Do you like working with computers? Do you want to work in an active job where you can be outdoors? Your personality. Are you methodical and well organised? Calm under pressure? Outgoing and friendly? Determined and resilient? Your values and motivation. What matters most to you? Money and security in a job? Helping people? Having a good work-life balance? Your qualifications. Have you got the grades you need to do certain jobs? What about your levels of maths and English? Do you need a vocational qualification in a specific area of work? Your contacts. Are there people around you, such as family and friends, or other people in your network, who can help you find what you want? Your location. If you don't drive, can you get to the workplace by bus, train or bike? Once you know what you want to do, these are some of the things to help you get there. Do some research. Have a look on the company's site. Find out what they do, how many people work there, and what their annual turnover is. Larger companies often have a careers section on their website with job profiles and current vacancies. The industry. Read up about the sector you want to go into. Is it an expanding area with lots of jobs, or something where opportunities are more limited and competitive? Local companies. Identify companies in your local area that do the kind of work you're interested in. Job roles. Many companies have lots of different job roles, so make sure you read the job description to make sure it's the right one for you. Keep a record. Keep a simple application tracker so you can remember what companies applied to, the job role and salary, the date you applied, the closing date, and the date you hear back from the company. Where to look and who to talk to. Start with friends and family. Talk to them about the jobs they do and how they got into them. Maybe something they do would interest you too. Look out for job and careers fairs. These are often held in venues such as the Council House in Birmingham, the NEC, or your local job centre. Most of them will have a wide range of employers there, or it may be an event that's recruiting for just one particular type of work. Employers' premises. This is particularly relevant for retail jobs. Shops will often have signs in the window saying, retail assistant required, apply within. Google Maps Street View. This is particularly useful if you want to virtually visit a business park or a retail park to see which employers are there. It's also handy if you want to plan a route to work. Job sites. There are literally dozens of job websites. A simple Google search will bring up the most popular ones. Look on specific company websites too. National Apprenticeship Service. This is on the government website and is the major source for apprenticeship vacancies all over the country. Department for Work and Pensions, find a job. If you're out of work and claiming universal credit, you can access the DWP's job search site and look for vacancies on there. Recruitment agencies. There are many of these on the high street and online, often specialising in temporary or contract work. Some recruit for specific areas of work such as construction, business administration, or work in schools. The speculative approach. This is when you contact an employer off your own bat. You could email, ring, or even call in person to ask about any vacancies now or in the future. Also inquire about work experience opportunities. Follow this up by emailing them your CV so they have a record of it on file. Remember, there are plenty of jobs that are never formally advertised, so this approach can definitely pay off. Using socials. Polish up your online profiles on different platforms or have a profile just for job searching. Follow companies you'd like to work for. Use Twitter, Facebook and LinkedIn. These platforms often carry job adverts and there is actually a job search facility on Twitter itself. Act now. Don't leave it until tomorrow because that job may have gone. Look before you leap. Travel. If you don't drive, can you get there by bus, train or bike? Job description, person specification. Read through these carefully. They often say whether a skill or quality is essential or desirable, so make sure you meet enough of the criteria. Salary or rate of pay. Salary is usually expressed as a yearly figure, so for example, £18,000 per annum. Rate of pay is usually expressed as an hourly figure, for example, £6.45 an hour, which is the national minimum wage for 18-year-olds. Hours. Full-time hours are normally somewhere between 35 to 40 hours a week. In some jobs you have to work shifts, evenings or weekends, so make sure the hours are right for you. Contract type. Examples of this include full-time, part-time, temporary or 0 hours. Keeping a record. Why is this important? Because you need to know what stage you're at with different jobs, so keep a note of the following. Applications, contacts, companies, job sites, recruiters and agencies. You will get there. Do something positive every day, whether that's applying for some jobs, improving your CV, or asking a company about work experience opportunities. Sign up to job alerts. Tell job sites the areas of work you're interested in, and they will alert you to new vacancies. Make a list of good websites, the ones that you find most useful. Think about your skills. Job titles don't always give a full picture about the job, so look at what skills they're asking for as well. Be flexible and consider other options. Full-time work may be your goal, but part-time work, work experience, volunteering can all be important steps on the way to achieving this. And don't forget, not all jobs are advertised, and speculative approaches can definitely pay off. Youth Promise Plus. If you're aged 16 to 29, not in work, education or training, and live in Birmingham or Solihull, we can work together to help you with your personal needs and goals and support you to a job, apprenticeship, training or education course. Please contact us on the emailed addresses below.
Perfect. Okay, so that was Youth Promise Plus, and there's a lot of good information in that. So let's see if you have any questions. Please think about anything you want to ask about that presentation. There's a lot of useful information. Some stuff has gone into the chat box as well that we might want to cover. I might bring Tracy in as well, because you did offer some tips in there. Tracy, are you there? Have I put you on the spot? Yeah, I think I have put Tracy on the spot. But so Tracy has said,
no, how many Max? Yeah.
There you go. Perfect. So yeah, do you want to share with everybody what you put in the chat box for them?
Well, just the fact that you could use some of these great tips to get some work experience. It's not just for job applications. You can use them to get some work experience, which might help you to decide on what it is you might want to do going forward. So, for example, you might go and do some work experience, say in an office, but then when you get there, you think, oh gosh, no, I really don't like that. Don't want to work there. So maybe I'll try somewhere else. So yes, we can use those tips for getting a job, but we can also use them for getting work experience to help you find out what you do like and also what you don't like.
A really valuable piece of advice. And I think that's pretty similar. And a lot of us that will speak to people at the beginning of their career will always say, use work experience, speak to people to find out, because there is nothing wrong with finding out about what you don't like rather than what you do like. Mike, can I just check, were you waving at me?
I was indeed, yeah. I just wanted to jump in there, just on the back of what Tracy was saying. We have seen a whole array of virtual work experience that have been offered by organisations. And in this kind of world now where everything's being delivered virtually, there are lots of opportunities to take a step into organisations and get a feel for what they're like. And I'd use that as an opportunity to go and test the water. As Tracy was saying, you get the work experience, go and see if that environment's right for you. And there's some really good opportunities to step into different industries, different sectors, and find out what it's like. And you're not going to lose anything by stepping into those opportunities and getting a feel for it. And they'll have tasks linked to it. There'll be vacancies and opportunities linked to them. But use this virtual world that we're in at the moment to go and have a look at what's out there. So if you know where you want to go, have a look for some key companies in that kind of sector that you could potentially do some work experience with. They'll be through their websites, there'll be searches you can do as well. But then also expand your horizons a little bit. Go and see what else is out there. See what are the big names you can pick out, or local organizations, see if they're doing something. But use the opportunities that are out there, because a lot of organizations have now gone completely virtual because they have to now. And that I'd almost say there's probably more online that you can get onto without you having to leave home. You can step into them, go and have a look at those organizations and ask lots of questions to help you kind of form where you want to go.
With that as well, I mean, I echo 100% what Mike just said there about virtual work experience. And at Pathway CTM, that's something that we help organise with a lot of organisations. So those young people that are signed up with us, they will see that. For example, we have done some with the NHS. But what it's about finding out if something is right for you or wrong for you, because if you find out what's wrong for you, then you know which way to go that is going to be right for you. Nobody is expecting you to know what is right for you without you trying it, and there is nothing wrong with finding out what is not right for you. Mike mentioned there are a couple of points about the skills that you could pick up from certain things, and Tracy mentioned the same too, and in Kevin's presentation it says the same thing as well. And I know that Kevin is here, and if you want to jump in, Kevin, jump in. But about those skills that you could use relates back to what Lana said, wasn't it? About it might not be might not know what the job is, but you know you've got those skills. So that's what we talk about when we say, do you know what your strengths are? Like Kevin has linked it in brilliantly to thinking about how to apply for things. Talk to your friends and family. Talk to people you know. Talk to people who are in jobs or work in companies. How did they find out about certain things, or how would they go about certain areas? I think there's a statistic as well that there's a lot of jobs that people get. I can't remember the percentage, but there's a percentage of jobs that people get that are not even jobs that are advertised yet, because of the research they do to find the right people to converse with. You might be interested in an industry, for example, let's say Lana's company, who works with Adidas and Michael Kors. You might be a big handbag fanatic and you think, I want to work for somebody who deals with Michael Kors handbags. Just because you make a connection with somebody like Lana, then when opportunities become available, oh, she can say, you know what, our HR department is looking for somebody to come and work in this area, and I know you're interested in it. Bang, you're already in there. So there are a lot of resources that you can use. Use those social media sites as well that companies use to see what they use. There's a lot of information out there. Kevin, is there anything that you want to add?
Yes, in my previous job, we actually took 4 young people on extended work experience. So they were with us for 2 days over a period of 3 months. And at the end of that period, there were 4 apprenticeships available. Sorry, we took 6 people on, and there were 4 apprenticeships available at the end of that extended work experience. So the work experience period was almost like a trial period to see how they were shaping up and whether they liked the job as well. And at the end of that period, we interviewed all 6 of them, and the 4 successful interviewees were offered apprenticeships, and we supported the 2 unsuccessful applicants into other jobs. So that just shows that getting in and doing some work experience can really pay off and can lead to a full-time paid job at the end.
That's really good. That's really good advice to hear as well, because that's what you guys need to think about. How do these opportunities come about? What do employers think, or how do they look for people? And you've just heard from Kevin there, one great example of how one thing can lead to another. And also, when you think about these things, I know at the beginning we asked the question about confidence, and we want you to feel confident about those opportunities ahead of you. And the reason why is because companies and people in companies that need to employ people know what stage young people are at, and they don't have unrealistic expectations. If you ever walked into a company that interviewed you at the beginning of your career and puts unrealistic expectations on you and your CV, then it's probably not the right company to work for. You will find the right ones. And when you've got advice like Lana has put in the chat box for us about what she wants to see when she sees somebody's application forms, she wants to see somebody's personality. I would agree with that, and I believe the other recruiters will agree with that as well. Let's see your personality. It's not just about your work experience, because you can do a job very well, but you might not be a very nice person and nobody wants you around. But you might not be very good at your job yet because you've never really done it before, but you've got great skills, you're a great team player, you're good to have around, and you lift the mood, and you learn quickly, or you're eager to learn. That is way more important than already being good at it and not being a great person to have around. And that's the kind of things, like I'm sure that the process that Kevin would have used and his company would have used to think about to take somebody on after work experience. Let's have a look. There is a few things in the chat box as well. Don't forget to use the Q&A box too. Somebody's asked, should you consider the worst case scenario when searching for a job, such as having the worst qualifications?
I would say on that you know, from personal experience of working with hundreds of young people over the years, that qualifications are really not the be all and end all. Personal skills and qualities are, in the long run, far more important. And once you've been in work a while, it doesn't really matter what qualifications you've got. People tend not to ask you. It's more about how you perform in the job and the skills and qualities that you can bring to a role. So if your qualifications aren't the greatest, don't let that put you off, because I've seen plenty of people still succeed despite not having the best grades.
Absolutely right. I would echo that as well, because I worked in a role where I would recruit people onto a degree apprenticeship, and it wasn't about the qualifications, it was about the person themselves. Chantel's put her advice for applying for roles at Jaguar Land Rover in our application forms is that we look for individuals to demonstrate elements such as their passion for the role and passion for learning. Passion's a word we use a lot about, but it is something. What fires you? What gets you going? What excites you? Okay, and it's not just about the qualifications, it's about those things. Do you have a passion for learning? Okay, that will help. Tracy, I believe, can I bring you in, Tracy? Did you want to jump in on this one?
Yeah, Max, I wanted to go back to something actually that Kevin was talking about. And it's something that's really valuable, and I just wanted to build on it, which is something called social capital, because it sort of links in back to really to what we were talking about before. It's not what you know, it's who you know. So by gaining these contacts, and whether that's through virtual work experience or however you do that, or speaking to friends, family, neighbours, then actually that can also help you with your career, even if it's just for research about different companies, or whether it's even to get that work experience or to get a job or an apprenticeship. So something that's really valuable at the moment is our social capital. And it's from a young person's point of view, it's not just about who they know, but also it's about thinking about who their parents know, who their neighbours know, who Auntie Joan round the corner knows. You know, we've got this huge network of people as individuals, and it's using them and picking their brains, which I think would be really helpful for young people to move themselves forward and to learn more about the opportunities. So I know we've gone back a bit on what we were talking about before, but I just wanted to add that in, really.
No, valuable, very valuable. It is a really good point, because also I think that's the point that we're trying to make in these things that we've spoken about so far, in what we've heard from Europa and Lana, and what we've heard from Kevin as well, because it's you may be putting applications in that may not be successful with that company, but if somebody has seen your application and knows somebody that is looking for somebody where you would be good for that role, they would more than likely to recommend you, because in this industry where we work to get people into jobs, we look out for each other. The company I worked with previously, when I was doing recruitment, I would think about other companies and I would see candidates say, maybe not right for us, but maybe this other role that we have, or another company where I know and you can recommend. That's a really powerful thing, talking about the contacts that your parents might have, but also going to an interview. You may not get the job for that one, but because you've been interviewed, again, they've seen what you're capable of. There may be something that comes up later on where they might think, right, I remember I interviewed David a couple of weeks ago and he was great, not for that role, but he is great for this role. Let's get him in. Already interviewed him. So it's about resilience. Lana said at the beginning, resilience, really important, because you've got to keep going. The opportunities are there. It's just going to take work. It's going to take preparation and time, and that's where we get smart. There are a few more questions coming through as well, so let's have a look. Conscious of time as well, but that's fine because we want to get through the good questions. How could you develop new skills such as communication skills, and how could you demonstrate these skills to your employer? I'd say one of the best ways to demonstrate your communication skills to an employer is in that interview. But on a CV, okay, we're going to understand, and anybody else who's out there, jump in. We're going to understand that you might not have the greatest amount of work experience, but what work experience do you have, and what have you done outside of college, or what have you done in your own life? Do you volunteer? Do you work in a Saturday job? What is that Saturday job? Does it involve communication? You know, for example, okay, I worked previously for a sandwich company, and so I worked in the hospitality industry, and I would say that young people who work in catering, hospitality, or even in the fast food industry, me personally, are some of the best people to employ because of the resilience that they build up, the communication skills that they have to build, because of the way that they can be treated in these areas. It is high paced, it's a high volume, and it's fast moving. You have to learn how to communicate with your team effectively and your customers effectively. Those are the kind of things that are going to help show your communication skills. Does anybody else, who else would offer.
I'll jump in there, Max. So I think, you know, the specific question around developing new skills and communication skills as an example, there are lots of ways of doing it. And we saw the video from the National Citizen Service, where many of the activities there are based around teamwork and communication. So if you get an opportunity to look at something like that, I'd grab it with both hands. But I think you can also demonstrate that in things like team sport. You know, if you're part of a team and you're playing sport or even gaming, you know, online gaming, you're communicating with people. But also you could think about a family quiz. If you're hosting that family quiz on something like this platform on Zoom, and you're kind of you're the host, you can talk about that and talk about how you communicate. And it's really you're probably doing a lot of those things already, but it's just about thinking about where you're doing it and being able to talk about that, which we'll come on to later in the presentation, I know.
Yeah, I mean, valuable point that Rob has made there. It's about because in team sports, are you communicating in a team sport? You might be a leader, but you're also got to be a team player. And what does that communication look like? So what are these things? Lana's put an interesting point in as well. Well, she does agree that hospitality definitely translates into customer service and sales because of the way you have to communicate. So you're feeling the pulse, you're understanding what your customer, not just what your customers are saying, but what your team is saying to you as well. And that's across customer service and along lots of, not just hospitality, but it could be working in clothes shops. You might be volunteering in a charity shop. You've got to still got to communicate with people. And what are those volunteering opportunities you use? And Lana has also said that in terms of that thing about grades that we were asked earlier about not having great grades or the right grades, it's about, she said, she would always ask candidates for the context of the grades as it could highlight self-awareness or resilience. And we may consider people who do not meet grade criteria due to that. That's an important thing to think about. Okay.
Max, can I just jump in just to go on the back of what Rob said and going back to the communication skills. Obviously, there are a lot of programs, as Rob's mentioned, NCS. There's lots of programs that the students will hear about in the schools and colleges. My advice would always be to try and step out of your comfort zone a little bit with that communication. So all the students will be very good at communicating with their friends and their social bubbles. But when you're outside of that, how confident are you? And do you talk to people? Do you go out your way to talk to people? And there'll be a lot of events happening within schools. There'll be employer events. There'll be activities being run in schools. And are you one of those people who will step out and go and ask questions, even if it may not be an industry that you are immediately drawn to? Do you go and talk to that person? Prepare yourself to talk to someone you've never spoken to before, because when you're going into a new role, new job, you could be faced by an interview with one person or a panel of people you've never met before. And it's preparing yourself to be confident in front of those kind of people. So when there's opportunities to, and it's never nice to do it because as it is, it's your comfort bubble, but step out a little bit, ask questions, talk to people. It may not feel natural to start with, but the more you do that, the more you talk to people, the more comfortable it will become. So my advice around communication skills will always be a case of if there's an opportunity to talk to someone new, take it, ask some questions, ask the first thing you come to go and ask it. There's never any silly questions in those kind of environments. Go and talk to people and feel a bit more comfortable talking to someone you've never met before, because then when you do get the opportunity in an organization with applications, with work experience, whatever you're going into, you will feel more comfortable about taking that step.
Perfect.
One of the things that I've said to students in the past is that if you're going into, say, supermarkets or shops and you see somebody with a name badge on, actually just try and use their name as a first step. So if their name badge says Emma, you might say, even if it's just as simple as thanks, Emma, or Emma, could you show me where such and such is? Because by using people's names, it starts to build up their confidence, and it will start to help people to feel able to talk to people, to approach people, because you've got a really nice way in. So that's a tip that a lot of students can use.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that, Tracy. Right. We've had a good number of questions there and lots of advice given. Remember to keep the questions coming in. Let's move on. So we're going to hear the next video. It's Dr. Rada. So let's get to it. Let's get to the next video. Let's see if I can make this work.
Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Rada Modgill. I'm a GP and broadcaster, and I've been asked by the incredible Careers and Enterprise company to share some tips about how to maintain your emotional well-being right now when your goals and exams and future plans have been changed. My first tip is to recognise that these feelings are totally appropriate and normal. When you've been working really hard towards something, you've had a goal, you've been motivated towards that goal, and then suddenly things get changed and they're out of your control, it can be very difficult. So recognise those feelings are okay, talk to someone, reach out for support, and work through those feelings. My second tip is around readjusting and working out now what your new goals are. So sitting down with someone and working out what were your goals, what are your goals now, are they similar, can they be adaptive, can you be flexible with those goals, and set some for you in a time scale so you still have that motivation, which is really good for your mental health at the moment. And my third tip is around that question that I always used to get asked in job interviews, which is tell us about a challenging time and how you rose to that challenge. This is obviously a really challenging time at the moment. I want you to sit down and think about, if you got asked that question in the future in an interview, what could you say? And what could you do now to show how you rose to that challenge? Is it about getting involved in online projects? Is it about still developing your skills? Is it about helping other people? What is it that you're doing to show those skills? Because those skills are really important no matter what sphere of life you're in, and for all careers, apprenticeships, jobs and team working. So good luck, take care, and I wish you all the best.
Right, there we go, some great advice from Dr. Rada. Now, we're going to move on to a presentation from Jaguar Land Rover, which I'm looking forward to as well. But by the power of technology, let me get this up. Let's go with it. Let's see.
So we hope that everyone is enjoying the session so far. So we're from Jaguar Land Rover, and we're going to be talking to you about preparing for interviews and assessment centres. So I just wanted to start off by introducing myself. So my name is Chantal Powers, and I work as an early careers consultant at Jaguar Land Rover. So just a bit of background about me. So I studied at Grace Academy Solihull Secondary School. I then continued my studies at Solihull College and University Centre. So initially I completed a level 3 in animal management, and then I actually did change my mind and went to go and continue and pursue a business management degree, which then led me to complete the HR undergraduate programme and graduate programme at Jaguar Land Rover. So in total I've worked for Jaguar Land Rover for 3 years. So I'm just going to pass you over to my colleague Emma to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Emma. So I'm an early careers recruitment delivery consultant at Jaguar Land Rover. So my role within the early careers team is the end-to-end process of the whole recruitment process, essentially. Just like Chantal, I also went to Grace Academy in Solihull, but I started off at Whitesmore, which was the school before Grace Academy. Went on to university. I've worked in recruitment at various different companies, and I've been at Jaguar Land Rover for nearly 4 years. So what we're going to cover in this part of the presentation then is the purpose of an interview, so why we actually conduct interviews, the types of interviews that you can actually do. There are various different types, so we'll touch upon that. What you could do before the interview, so what you could do to prepare yourself, what you could do to help make a good impression, and then obviously discuss what to expect on the day and what you can do during the interview as well.
So just reflecting in terms of what Emma's showcased in terms of what we'll be discussing today. So firstly, I'm going to reflect on the purpose of an interview. So it's an opportunity for you and the employer to meet, and that may be virtually or it could be face-to-face. And it's an opportunity for the employer to learn more about what is that your passion for the role, what excites you about going for that role. So in an interview, interviewers aim to identify whether you have the skills or the behaviours that match with what the company is looking for in particular for that role. And also, it's not just the organisation's chance to learn about you, it's your chance to learn more about the role in the company. So really do take this opportunity to learn, does that company and that role actually suit you? And that's a really important factor, that it's about, do you fit the organisation, but does that organisation meet what's important to you and what you value? And it's also then your chance to positively influence the interviewer in order to secure the job.
Okay, then, so the different types of interviews that you can sit through. So the key thing to remember here is that each organisation does have a different interview process. So what I'll do here is just touch upon a few of the potential interview formats that you can do. So within the current climate, the most popular at the moment is a virtual interview. So it will follow the same process as if you were doing a face-to-face interview, but it will use a platform such as Zoom or Microsoft Teams, and it will utilise the camera functionality as well. So you'll be able to see the assessor or the interviewer, and then they'll be able to see you as well. You could also do a one-to-one face-to-face interview. So if you are brought in to a venue, so it could either be a hired venue or the organisation's office or site, it will be conducted with yourself and one interviewer. There'll also be some technical interviews. So they'll discuss your technical abilities for the role. Here you'll be able to showcase what knowledge and skills that you've picked up throughout school, college or university. And then obviously there's some competency-based interviews. So these types of interviews assess your behaviours. So here is where you could talk about your specific skills and then touch upon your previous experience, whether it be through work or school work, to discuss how your behaviours are suitable for the role.
Thanks, Emma. So in terms of what can you do before the interview? So one of the key things that we'd recommend doing is researching the company you've applied for. So having a look on their website, seeing if you can find more about what that company's culture is, what that specific department does, but then also going further and searching about the industry trends. So, for instance, a role at Jaguar Land Rover, you may look at the trends regarding electric vehicles so that you could showcase your knowledge within that interview. So it shows that you've demonstrated that you've went that extra mile to find out more. We'd also then say reread the job description that you've applied for so you can help to align your skills to that role. One thing that I'd recommend is when you do apply for a role, it's really useful to save a copy of the job description. Often when the role's expired or closed, you often sometimes can't get back to the job description. So it's also just really useful just to save it, so then you can come back to it before your interview and just check what type of things would you want to cover off to show you've got those skills or behaviours, for instance. We'd also recommend to start thinking about some questions that you'd ask an interviewer. So always at the end of an interview, an interviewer should ask, do you have any further questions that you'd like to cover? So what are some example questions that you could ask? So some of the most common ones are, what development opportunities are there for the organisation? What would you say the culture's like? And even asking the interviewer, what would you say that you enjoy the most about your role? So that will help to give you more information to learn about the organisation and that individual. You also need to look about the dress code. So some organisations may be really business formal. Some organisations may have more of a casual dress code, but it's just rechecking and making sure you read those instructions. If the interview is face-to-face, check the location and just make sure you have plenty of time to make your way to the location. Check if you're travelling by public transport, what time does the bus get there or the train, just making sure that you're aware of any alternative routes as well. You could also do a mock interview before. So you may talk to a family member, a guardian, a friend, or just anybody that's from your career service at school. I'm sure many of the individuals around you would be more than willing to help do that with you. And it's just really useful to start thinking about how you might answer those questions on the day. And it's also to start thinking about before, what experiences can you draw upon? So it could be work, it could be studies, it could be hobbies and interests. Not everyone's going to have work, so it's thinking about what different scenarios you can use during that time.
Great, thanks, Chantal. So as Chantal touched upon previously about planning your route to the venue, so if you are invited to a face-to-face interview, punctuality is key, so you might want to attend obviously on time. In order to do that, there's various things you could do. So plan your journey, particularly if it's an early morning interview. You might want to factor in whether the school traffic or just general commuter traffic around the area. Look at different routes. So just in case, you know, if you were traveling by train, the train's going to be delayed, just look at alternative routes as well. Try to arrive to the venue at least 15 minutes before the interview start time. This will just give you a chance to, you know, settle your nerves a little bit, have a comfort break, and maybe grab a drink before the start of the interview as well. If it's a virtual interview, then you'll also want to try and attend on time as well. And in order to do that, you can check your computer's technology. So you can join the interview 5 or 10 minutes before. Just follow the link that the organisation gives to you. Test that your camera is working, test that your microphone is working, and giving yourself that time to prepare will allow you to raise any concerns over the technology if you do have any. During the interview, you'll obviously want to show that you're positive about the role and your motivation for the role as well. So be enthusiastic about the job. If you've done your research, you'll be able to talk about the organisation in more detail and really show your motivation for that role as well. So during the interview as well, your body language speaks volumes. So if you sit upright in your chair, have an open face, just as I'm doing now, you can use hand gestures to help you articulate some of the things that you're saying. And just, it really shows just, if you've got open body language, it just shows that you're engaged with the interviewer as well.
So we're just going to cover now what actually should you do during that interview stage. So be prepared to talk through anything you've written on your CV or your application. So it's just being aware that the interviewer may print that out, may have read that in depth before, to try and understand more about your interest potentially. So just make sure you reread that before and make sure you're ready to talk through that. We encourage you to try and speak as clearly and confidently as you can. We recognise that interviews are a nervous process, so try to be as confident in yourself as you can is a really good factor. In terms of try not to use slang words or using acronyms or abbreviations. In terms of, remember that the audience that you'll be talking to, so the interviewer, may not have worked in the same organisation before, may not understand your hobby or interest. So if you do have an abbreviation, it's just remembering just to explain what that is to the interviewer. Where I spoke about earlier, looking at the application form, the job description, and talking about what key skills you wanted to identify. If you've done that beforehand, that can help you to start thinking about what are those key points or key skills that you want to demonstrate to the interviewer before. So you can try and prepare yourself to get those answers and skills added into those answers you provide. If you don't know the question or understand the question that the interviewer's spoken to you, just ask them, can you rephrase it for you? In some of the terminology that they're using, it may be new to you. So just ask them, can you tell me that in a different way? I don't quite understand that question. And they should be more than happy to rephrase that for you. Start thinking about demonstrating what you've achieved and how you work with others. So team working is a really important element to showcase. So being able to draw upon examples within an interview is a great skill to be able to do. Remembering to smile. Smiling helps to give across that you're engaged and that you've linked to that positive body posture that Emma was talking to you about. In addition to this, so you may want to prepare notes or bring along your CV before. So what I would say, if you're doing something face-to-face and you're going to bring something with you, just try and bring it in a presentable format. So you may have a booklet or a folder to bring that in, but there's nothing stopping you from bringing in that information. In previous jobs, what I've done is look through all of the behaviours or skills the interviewer's looking for, and I then prepared examples of different scenarios of when I've been able to showcase that. Or if you've done a technical project, for instance, you could showcase that on the day to the interviewer and give them an image also. And also just to remember to ask those questions at the end. And when you're thinking about some of the answers that you may want to give during an interview, is thinking about the STAR technique. So describe the situation or event you were in, explain the task that you had to complete, explain the actions that you took. So for instance, in a team exercise, you may want to demonstrate what did you do within that team. Were you the project manager? Were you the person that managed the timelines, for instance? It's about drawing upon those exercises. What did you do and how did you then contribute to the result or the success, and what learning did you take from that?
Okay, so here we've got some example questions that you could typically be asked during an interview. So to start off with, the most common question might be, tell me about yourself. So this is a good way for the interviewer to get to know you as a person. So here you could relate it to your CV. So often you might have a personal statement in your CV that is just an opening paragraph to you and what you're all about. It's a really good way to open the interview. It's just kind of a little introduction to the assessor. Another question, I'll just go through a few, is what are your strengths or weaknesses? Now, this is a really good question to ask because it shows some self-awareness. If you can just talk through some of your strengths, it shows that you're aware of your abilities and your skills and how you could relate those to the role that you've applied for. Weaknesses is also good. It can be hard to be self-critical, but it is a good way to show that you're still on a development path and that you're keen to learn. So that those are really good questions to really delve into you as a candidate. What's been your biggest achievement to date? Again, another chance for you to talk about some experiences that you've done and really set yourself out amongst the other candidates. And a tricky one is, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? So that just shows your motivation for the role also, and where you think your end goal is going to be. All these questions are just to see what you're like as a candidate and how you're a good fit for the role and obviously for the organisation.
Thanks, Emma. So we hope that section gave you a bit more insight into interviews. So how can you prepare? What can you do on the day? And what type of questions that you may get on the day. So we're now going to move into another section, which is talking about an assessment centre. So you may expect to do an assessment centre with a larger organisation potentially, or where an organisation needs to assess multiple individuals, they may do an assessment centre. So an assessment centre is a combination of tasks and activities in order to assess your suitability for the role. So this may include an interview or a group exercise, but we're going to reflect more later on some of those exercises that you'd undertake. So on the day, you're likely to be assessed by multiple people within the organisation. So you may see 2 or 3 members of staff during that day in the different exercises. They can last between half a day or up to 2 days. It really does depend on the organisation. The key thing, as I've mentioned, so you'll be joined with other candidates at the event. So larger organisations in particular may be assessing quite a few candidates. So you could be being assessed with up to 8 individuals in that day as well. One key thing is, you know, there are going to be other people on the day. It's just remembering to keep focused on your own performance, but also remember that you'll need to support others as well. And that's really important within a group exercise, for instance. And an assessment centre is often the final stage of the recruitment process.
Thanks, Chantal. So yeah, so you'll be able to see if an organisation does conduct assessment centres by visiting their careers page on their website, because most of the time they do outline their entire recruitment process, and if they do conduct assessment centres, then they'll outline the process there. Also, in many applications, they'll advise that an assessment centre is required. So here's some of the roles, or some of the activities, that we'd conduct via an assessment centre, and what other companies may also do via an assessment centre as well. So typically you will always have an interview during an assessment centre. So they're the interviews that we previously touched upon. More commonly is as well our group exercises. So as Chantal said, an assessment centre does assess more than one candidate. So a good way to see how you would work within a team is to put you into a group exercise. We'll touch upon in more detail on that later on in the presentation, but just a few of the exercises that you could do is an intro exercise, which is a paper-based task, some practical exercises, and role plays as well, so all various types of activities.
Thanks, Emma. So we're just going to reflect through now what are the different exercises that you could do and try and give you some more information about those. So we're only going to reflect on a couple that we've discussed, but we hope that will give you more of an overview. So in terms of the one-to-one interview, we have discussed this previously in this session, but just to give you some more concept around this, it's about predicting future potential. It's about looking at what are you particularly good at, what inspires you, for instance, and a few more factors about whether you would be motivated by that role. And an example of that you may be asked in an interview is, if you were struggling to understand a new task you have been given, what would you do? So some questions within those formats will be scenario based to see how would you react, what type of things would you do, would you ask somebody for help, for instance.
So another exercise you could do is the group exercise, which we've previously touched upon. So as I've said before, they're all about you working as a team. So you'll be put in a room typically with potentially up to 6 candidates. You'll all be given a brief, which is just a scenario-based task, and you'll work through as a group through the exercise. You'll get individual time to prepare, and then the exercise is you just talking with each other to come up with an outcome. Within the group exercise, the assessors may be within the room, so they're typically the interviewers that you've seen during the day. They'll just be there to observe. They won't get involved in the group exercise at all. But the key thing to remember about a group exercise is try to participate as much as you can. But also if you're aware that you're speaking a lot and you notice that someone within the group exercise is being a little bit shy or not talking as much, then you can ask them questions to try and engage them in the group. It just shows really good teamwork if you do display behaviours like that. Group exercises are time allocated activities, so remember to keep an eye on the time. Again, it just shows good timekeeping. And then, as I've touched upon previously, the assessors will be in the room. You'll probably have one lead assessor that will talk through the group exercise, but the assessors won't be involved in the group exercise at all. They'll just be there to observe you.
Thanks, Emma. So I'm just going to give you a bit more detail about what to expect from a practical exercise. So in terms of practical exercises, these may occur where you are doing a particular manual role, for instance. So at Jaguar Land Rover, where we have apprentices, for instance, that are going to be working on or in our manufacturing areas, we would assess them through a practical exercise. So during a practical exercise, things that you may be given during that day would be an actual piece of kit or equipment. And then you might be given a form of instructions. So how can you build that item together? And the key thing about a practical exercise in particular is that an organisation will be looking to understand how do you follow a process. So in particular, if there was an organisation that's really key on quality, they'd want to see that you aren't missing steps and jumping ahead, or if there was an error, for instance, in the documentation that you're given, that you're able to identify that and potentially ask the interviewers some more detail, or that doesn't quite look right. I'm not sure how I can put that piece together. Some of the elements of that practical exercise will be looking to understand how you follow the process, but also if you ask for additional information. So I'm now going to hand you on to Emma to discuss another exercise.
Thanks, Chantal. So another exercise you could do is an intro exercise. So this exercise is typically a paper-based exercise. So during this exercise, you treat it kind of like an exam. It would be an individual exercise. So it's designed to assess your approach to planning, prioritising and managing work-related tasks and challenges. So you'll be given some scenarios. It could be within a booklet of different scenarios, and then you're given an answer sheet, which typically has multiple choice questions on it. And then you just select the relevant answer, which you would pick. This is also a timed exercise. So as I said before, you kind of treat it like an exam. Typically, it can last up to 1 hour, and then you have to try and answer as many of the questions as you can within that 1 hour time frame.
Thanks, Emma. So another exercise that you may also do is a technical presentation. So this would involve presenting to an assessor. It could be one assessor, it could be a couple of assessors. It depends on the organisation. And this could be done via a PowerPoint presentation, for instance, or it could even be through flip chart paper. Some organisations may give you pre-work to prepare your presentation, or it may be that you prepare the presentation on the day. And the main thing that this is covering is to assess your technical skills and ability. So an example could be, can you talk through a project that demonstrates your technical ability? So that may be drawing upon a school project or college project in particular that you've undertaken.
Okay, so to finalise the assessment centres then, here's just some key things to remember. So assessment centres aren't designed to catch you out. Organisations do want you to enjoy the experience and to learn more about the organisation, and obviously for the organisation to learn more about you. So with that in mind, the assessors are there to encourage and support you and not to catch you out in any way. So use the opportunity as well to network with fellow candidates. So being at an assessment centre, as we've said before, there will be multiple candidates there, which could potentially be your future colleagues. So use the time at the event to network. There will be breaks potentially during each exercise where you can have a chat with the fellow candidates there. Remember, it's your chance to shine. So the more research you do and the more preparation you do, the better you're going to perform on the day. And in the group exercises, remember that you are being assessed of how you work as a team. So try to support the wider team in all and encourage everyone to participate, as I previously explained.
Thanks, Emma. So we hope that section helped to give you a bit more information about what to expect from an assessment centre. What are some of those activities that you may be doing, and how may you need to interact with others? So we just wanted to close off this part of the section by reflecting on what can you go and do now. So you may now feel more confident after having the session and finding more about interviews, assessment centres and what you could do. So you may feel more confident about making an application for a role. So for instance, we recommend checking company websites for application timelines. So in particular for apprenticeships, undergraduate placements and graduate roles at Jaguar Land Rover, we typically open our applications from around September, October time, and we'll then close them around December to March time. So a lot of larger organisations recruiting within that space typically recruit from around September time. So it's one to keep an eye out for now. You also might want to go onto the company website and register your interest. So that could be for a job role, or it could even be if the organisation is running events. So that may be an application, hints and tips session. It may even be learning more about the organisation. There's lots of virtual events that you can join and try and find on the company website. We'd also recommend then going onto company websites, having a look at the different recruitment processes. So a lot of company websites will give you a bit more detail, what to expect, what are the key steps within that process. So that's another thing that you can equip yourself to go and do now. And we'd also just encourage you as a final one is to research how you could best prepare. There's lots more resources on Google. If you just search interview preparation, for instance, there's so many resources available to you that we do encourage you after this session to go and do more research and find out a bit more. So thank you, and we hope you've found this session valuable today.
Thank you.
Right, well, I think it's fair to say that that is a very comprehensive session and lots of great advice in there. I can also see that there's been a lot of conversation going on in the chat box whilst we've been watching that presentation, and it's great. And I'm just going to ask, I know Chantal is here, others have contributed in the chat box as well, and is there anything in particular that we want to pick out that's been going on whilst that presentation has been going on for other people?
I think one of the things that we got asked about, Max, was about dress code for organisations, and does that have an impact on how an organisation perceives you? And I think one of the key things is that organisations usually within their instructions for an interview, they'll provide you with an overview of what they're expecting. And I think, you know, reading some of those pre-instructions and aligning to that dress code can show that you've read information beforehand and that you're aligning to the organisation. And I think one of the points that I tried to make is, for instance, at Jaguar Land Rover, our code would be that we would expect you to be in business formal dress. But some organisations, for instance, that are more creative or could be in a retail role, for instance, could have a more casual dress code. So it's just making sure that you read any of those instructions before, or even just asking the organisation if you're unsure, what would you like me to wear for the interview?
Really valuable advice there, because it is one of those things that's always difficult, especially when you're starting out your career and you're not sure, what do I wear? And there is no harm in asking that question. And that's one of the things that I think you saw from that presentation. It is about preparation as well. This is down to you too, and that preparation shows it can also show your suitability to the role. So where am I going? If you need to find out where you're going, because it's not a virtual interview, it's an actual face-to-face interview, and you get in touch with the company and say, look, just so I know I'm getting the right place, what's the postcode, whatever, so that you know where you're going and you can test the route out. It shows that you're planning and that you're making sure you can get there. What is the dress code? There was another question about how long is an interview typically? That is going to vary job to job, company to company. I believe, Chantal, did you say that Jaguar Land Rover is about 30 to 45 minutes?
Yeah, so for instance, if you're applying for an apprenticeship for Jaguar Land Rover, we have different types of interviews, but typically it's a 30 to 45 minute interview from our side. But I think where you've just expressed there, Max, it is different by organisation and role, and it depends on, for instance, how many, you know, are you going to an assessment centre, for instance, the interview process may be slightly shorter compared to if just the process that the organisation was just doing an interview. That may be slightly longer because they're only having one chance potentially to assess you.
But again, it's worth asking that question, because you need to find out, you need to know, and it shows that you are interested to know how long it is, because whatever it may be, you need to plan the rest of your day. But that's important because it shows that you are diligent, that you are prepared, and you are preparing and making sure everything is in place. There is one point I want to come to, and there was a question that was asked. It's a really valuable one. Are there any websites where you can enter your favorite subjects at school and it will give you some examples of jobs you could do with them? That is obviously the eternal question, isn't it? Because you're young, you're thinking, what am I going to do with what I enjoy in life? There are thousands of jobs. tens of thousands of jobs that we just don't know exist yet. And that's why you look at people at my age, I'm slightly older than you guys, as you go through your career, I've actually done different jobs and moved into different directions because of interests that I have, that one job was opened up and I found out about, moved into another one. So you're probably thinking, well, how do I know what job I'm going to do for the rest of my life if I don't know what's suited to me? Don't worry about that. There is a resource that Tracy has put in the question and answer box. There's a website, it's called icould.com. Okay, simple as that, icould.com, and they've got a thing on there called Buzz Quiz, and we use it. It's a free resource, and it's great because it assesses your personality and shows you what you are adapted to in terms of what your strengths are, the kind of person you are, and what areas you can go into. Don't let that be your gospel and your Bible that you say, well, that website said I have to do that job, so that's the job I'm going to do. But use it as a guide, okay? And it goes back to that previous point, doesn't it? And I'm sure the other panelists will agree. Work experience, internships, try these things out, get in touch with companies, experience them yourself, and then you will see what your strengths are good at. Because you will find that when you go to these work experiences, whether they be virtual or real, those people that you work with will say, do you know what? Your strengths are not suited to this job, but your strengths are probably suited to these jobs. That's other ways of finding out. We had a lot of good information in the chat box. Let's see. Go for it, Tracy.
Well,
say that again, Tracy, sorry.
There's another website as well, depending on where you're at with your career in your studies. You might want to look at something like prospect.ac.uk, and with that, that will tell you about the jobs linked to different degrees. So, for example, if you're interested in geography, you might say, okay, well, let me have a look at all the different jobs linked into geography. Let's just pretend I've got a degree in geography. And if you follow that link through, it will actually come up with some options that you can follow through and do some research further. So depending on where you're at, you might look at iCould, you might look at prospects.ac.uk, those both websites that might help. But of course, you could go to the professional website. So if you're interested in chemistry, you might look at the Chemistry Society. You might look at the British Psychological Society websites. Loads and loads of different ideas on those particular websites for the different jobs as well. So lots of places that you can have a little look. And of course, your teachers. So, you know, if you've got a history teacher who's passionate about their history, they will always tell you about the different jobs that are linked into their subject. That's their area of expertise. Use them.
Perfect, absolutely right. There was a few tips that came in through the chat box, and I believe it was Mike that put it in there as well. And Tracy too. And it's about preparing yourself for an interview. Now, I've done quite a few interviews both ways. I've interviewed hundreds of people, but I've also been to a fair number of interviews over my career. And it's about practicing the preparation again. Think about the questions that you think you might be asked. You're never going to know all of the questions you're going to be asked, but think about the questions you might be asked and how you would like to answer them. Think about what you would like to present to that employer, because you've done your research, you know what they're looking for, you really like that company, you think the job's right for you. So what do I want to show them? What are they asking from a candidate? How can I show them that? But then it's about practicing. It says it in the chat box there. Speak out loud. Put yourself in a quiet room and answer the questions out loud. Verbalize them, because it helps you to hear yourself say it, and you use proper sentences. Don't just say it in your head. It helps to say it, because then you can gauge your intonation, and the more you say it, the more comfortable you will feel saying those sentences. And Mike put in there, I believe it was, that if you go to an interview and they ask you if you want a drink, even if it's a glass of water, just ask for, yes, please, I would like a glass of water. Now, you may not drink it, but if you're asked a question and you need a moment to pause and think, which is no bad thing, always take a minute, take a few seconds to think. Don't answer straight away, but you can take a sip of water, and whilst you're taking that sip of water, you're thinking, but it's giving you that time. You're filling the void, and it's making you feel comfortable. But I can assure you, as somebody who used to run interviews, and I think Chantal and Lana will back me up on this, that when you interview somebody and somebody takes a couple of seconds to think about the question that you've asked them and think about what answer they're going to give you, I used to like that, because it shows that that person is actually making an effort to think and come up with the right answer. Would you guys agree with me on that one?
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I think, you know, in terms of when you are doing an interview, you don't expect that everybody's going to know the answer straight away to some of those questions. And I think, you know, it may be that you've done preparation beforehand and you want to bring across some of those skills. So having that time just to reflect and think how best to respond to it, I think then you can draw upon trying to answer that question the best that you can. So I definitely say that, you know, it's not an issue if you take, you know, a few moments to pause, also to answer and reflect on the answer you want to provide.
Absolutely. And remember as well that, go for it, Tracy.
Sorry, the other thing that I've said to people in the past, and it would be interesting to hear the other panelists' views on this, is that actually this is not an exam. Your interview is not an exam. And if you're really not confident and you've got some notes to take in, there's nothing wrong with saying to the interviewer, you know what, I'm really nervous. I've got some notes prepared, for examples on things. Let me just refer to my notes just to remind myself. Personally, I think there's nothing wrong with that. That's showing me that you've prepared for that interview. So my tip is always, don't be frightened to use your notes. It's not an exam, but I'll be interested to hear what others say about that.
I personally would agree with you, Tracy. As an interviewer, or when I used to run interviews, we know that any candidate is going to be nervous because they care. That's normal. It's fine. It's okay to be nervous, and we know that. So let yourself off on that one. And I can share my experience in interviews, and I did a languages degree. So a lot of my degree was around doing oral presentations in different languages. And you would always have to present. And even in an interview, I would take notes with me and my hands shake uncontrollably. So even in my exams, my hands would shake so much that my examiners would say, why don't you sit down and put the paper on your knees? And then we found out that my knees would shake so much that even the paper wouldn't sit on there. But it was something that I just had to learn to be comfortable with. And I would always say, can I just have a table or somewhere to rest my notes? Because otherwise I won't be able to read them. And people understood. Because as an interviewer, we want to get the best out of the interviewee. We really want to find that out. That's our job. That's what we're there for. So being nervous is okay. And just be comfortable with it. And we're not going to, companies don't want to put you at a disadvantage. If you find yourself in an interview where you're being interviewed by somebody who isn't sympathetic towards you being nervous as a normal thing and is giving you a hard time about it, you'd probably want to ask yourself if that's a company you want to go and work for. Okay. And that's just me being honest. Others may disagree and I'd be interested to hear. There is one thing we want to cover here. Mahin asked, how could you tell a company if you were fired from a previous job? Rob has quite rightly put in there that it's important to be honest, prepare how you will describe the situation in advance. It's important to show that you learned something from that situation and that you now want to put what you've learned into action in a new exciting role. And that's really important, whether it's about you may have been fired from a previous job or anything else that has gone wrong. What did you learn? What have you learned, and what are you putting into practice to put that learning into place? That's the exciting thing, because we all learn as we go. But be honest, because if you're not honest and it's found out later on, you put yourself in trouble. It is about being honest and open. Things go wrong. We make mistakes, but do we learn from them, and can we move forward? And sometimes it just needs that reset to move forward. Okay.
Max, can I jump in and say, I'm employed by Solihull Council, and all of our interviews are based around the criteria on the job descriptions and person specifications. So no one will be caught out in any of our interviews. We think that's good practice. So all the knowledge and skills and behaviours on those two documents are the things that you should prepare answers and examples for.
Valuable advice. It is, again, it goes back to that same point. Do your preparation before the interview. It is a piece, and it's an important step, and it's an important piece of work. Find out the information you need. Is it on the job description? Is it on the application? What they're looking for, what they want to hear, what the structure looks like, especially when you're talking about a council as well. Mahin has asked, what should you do if you see that the interviewer is perhaps getting bored from your answer? I would quickly wrap up and move on to the next question. Does anybody else offer any advice on that one? What would you do?
I was just typing a response there, Max. I was just going to say, I think it's really important to try and structure your answer. So as Chantel pointed out in her presentation, you can use the STAR technique. the situation, the task, the action, and the result. That way, you know that what you're saying is providing a full and rounded answer to that question without you going off track and perhaps waffling a bit about something that you didn't mean to waffle about, but it can happen. So do try and use that kind of structure when you're thinking about your answer.
And again, it's back to that same point. Do your preparation, think about the questions you might be asked and how you want to answer them. And then when you vocalize them out loud before you get to an interview, you can tell yourself if you're taking too long to answer a question. And similarly, I think I'll ask Lana and Chantal about this as well. When you invite somebody in for an interview, it's normally because you've seen something good in their CV. Would you be upset if somebody turned up to the interview with their CV in front of them?
No, so I think I'd be happy for somebody to come with a CV or the application information that they've provided. For instance, we ask in our application form, it is all virtual, but we would ask for what is your passion for the role, etc., and those type of items. So as we said, I think about bringing pieces of information or etc. is useful, and I think what you do put in your CV, for instance, with not just Jaguar Land Rover, if you're doing it for another organisation, an interviewer may have looked at that really in depth and draw into specific points into that CV. So, for instance, your personal profile or your hobby and your interest, it may be useful for you to draw back and see what points you're referring to as well.
Perfect. Lana, were you going to jump in as well?
Yeah, I think also we do application forms for our school leaver programme, so I wouldn't have seen what your CV could look like that you've pulled together. So for me, it'd be a really interesting insight. Yes, I may have seen some of the information, but I'd like to see what you've written in your personal profile. I'd like to see the layout that you've gone for. So I think one, it shows great organisation and dedication to the role if you bring it along. Two, I may not have seen it before. And three, part of our recruitment stages is with the branch managers, and they're really, really busy people. And without any sense of ignorance, they might not have had a chance to really look at it. So I think it's always a positive for us.
Brilliant. We've got a question. I mean, that's really valuable advice. And I would say the same. And even when I go to interviews, I always take my CV in and I take my notes in, because I want to make sure I cover everything. But I take my CV in because I know that I'm going to be asked questions about what I put on my CV. I need to know that I need to know what's on my CV and how to answer it. And I can refer back to it. So, for example, if Mike was interviewing me and he was to say, right, so Max, tell me about this job that you had in 2015. Oh, yeah, I can see what Mike's talking about. And those little things will help you feel more confident and comfortable and less nervous, because you have the resources there. You're not scrambling around. You don't need to remember everything in your head. And we've got a tough question, but important one. How can you stand out from the crowd on the questions like, tell me about yourself, or why do you want this job? And I'd be interested to hear from Lana and Chantal about this one. Go on, Lana, you go first.
I always think that looking at the values on the website is a really, really good first step. And we say that in our application form online. We want to see how you relate to the business and if we're compatible. So it may be that you say, my name's Lana, I am studying sociology, business and health and social care. I play for the local netball team. And personally, I looked at your website and saw that you recruit on passion and personality. And I'm very passionate about the areas of study that I'm in and the hobbies that I do. And I think that could translate into the working environment that I'm going into. So I think that's a great one, even with things like sort of catchment lines like Nike, just do it. You could talk about how that speaks to you. So I think looking at the actual background of the company that you're applying for, or even university, I think some of the sort of values a university have or the history a university have may be worth looking into and relating that to yourself when you're talking about that. I also think as well, just thinking forward and what is it that you'd like to get out of this opportunity. So it may be that you talk about, I'm really interested in going into the commercial world, and it's as simple as that. Or I'm really interested in being a woman in logistics. I know that I heard that in an interview and that really took me by surprise, and I thought that was fantastic. So I think just turning the question on its head a little bit and looking at it from a wider context of not just yourself, but the environment you're about to go into and the environment that you've come from.
Perfect. Chantal?
I think from my experience, I think one of the key things at Jaguar Land Rover, for instance, that we look for from an answer would be where we've spoken about that someone's got that passion for learning. So it may be a skill set that you're looking to develop in the future, but you showcase that you do want to continue to develop both in the workplace, but also if you were doing an apprenticeship, for instance, that would be in line with the college provider or university provider as well. But I think one of the key things that really impresses us within interviews is somebody that's went that extra mile to do the research. So they may have looked at the company websites and looked at the values like Lana discussed, but also going that little bit further and researching some of the industry trends. So if you're interested in automotive or the technology industry, for instance, is looking how that's going to change in the next 5 years, for instance, or what's happening in the market at the moment, so that you can talk through some examples of how you see that you could impact that within the future in the organisation, or impact what's happening now.
And also the other thing I would say, I mean, what Lana and Chantal have said is really important to think about. But with that question, it can be a little bit difficult, but it's not really, because the question about tell me about yourself, it's a simple question, is tell me about yourself, but you need to think about who are you, what interests you, what do you like? What I don't want to see and what I want people to move away from is you saying what you think the interviewer wants to hear. As soon as you start to think, what does the interviewer want to hear? And I'm going to tell them that, things will start to unravel pretty quickly, because the interviewer does not want to hear what you think they want to hear. The interviewer wants to hear the truth. Who are you? And when you talk about yourself, your passions, genuinely, then you come across in a much better way. And you know what? If you're sat in an interview and you're talking about your passions and the things that you like and you enjoy and who you are and what you're good at, and the interviewer is thinking this person's not right for my company, then you're not. Then you know that that avenue is not your avenue. Move on. And you keep going to find the people that match. An interview is a two-way conversation, and a job between an employer and an employee is a relationship. Yeah, you have to enjoy them as much as they enjoy you. And in the interview, it's a two-way conversation about you finding out about them as well as them finding out about you. And that's why you bring your questions and you bring you. Then they sit there and say, you know what, maybe that person isn't right for our company and I don't think we're compatible. Okay, let's move on. Next one. So that question, how do I stand out? You stand out by being honest, by being genuine, but also making sure that you bring all of that useful stuff that Lana and Chantal said aligns with, if you have it and it aligns with their culture and their philosophies, bring it out and let them see it. I am a little bit conscious of time, and we have got more. We have got a little bit of question time at the end as well. So we can save some more questions for the end. Let's move on, because we've got some more videos, we've got more presentations. Let's get to it. Let me see if I can get this going.
So when I think about my professional journey and how I ended up in the teaching profession, I'll be the first to admit that that wasn't the initial plan at all, if I'm perfectly honest. And I really tried to reflect back how I ended up in teaching. When I finished my GCSEs and did my A-levels, I did my A-levels in computing and 2 sciences. And if I'm perfectly honest, I knew that I wanted to go to university, but I wasn't 100% sure what I wanted to do there. As I got closer to going to university, I had to eventually make a decision. I'd spent the summer before working for an IT department at the hospital. And I really enjoyed it, and I really was interested in the world of IT. It was quite a buzzword at the time, if I'm perfectly honest. A lot of people starting to talk about computers, this thing called the internet that was slowly starting to grow. And I thought, I want to do something with regards to that. So not soon after that, I did a degree in business and information systems. But still, after I finished my degree, I still wasn't 100% sure what I was going to do in terms of my career and my future career aspirations. I ended up working as a data analyst, which basically means looking at spreadsheets, looking at data, trying to save businesses money. And I remember at a really young age, I would have been kind of 22, 23-ish. I was sitting there in this job and thinking that I'm not really a massive fan of this job. I was hired to try and save the business I was working for money. But the business I was working for was the NHS. So literally, I was in an office. When I went for lunch, I was face to face with lots of doctors and nurses, people really trying to help other people. And I was massively inspired by those people. And it just made me think that the job that I'm doing at the moment, although it's valuable, and now that I'm older, I know how valuable it is. I just remember the young me thinking that I love the fact that these people are out there helping people. During my time with that job, I ended up doing some work experience for 2 students who came into our office. So I was asked to chaperone 2 15-year-olds and just show them the ropes. And I absolutely love those 2 weeks, showing them what I do, just showing them, giving them bits of advice. And effectively, that was my first taste of teaching. And that's really where I got the teaching bug. If those 2 kids hadn't come in for work experience, I don't think I would have got the teaching bug. Not soon after that, I asked some friends of mine who were teachers or training to be teachers a little bit about it. And fast forward about 6-7 months, I'd finished my PGCE and had my teaching qualification. So I think, just to echo what you guys have said already, and just to really say that it was never the initial plan to get into teaching, but as my career journey progressed, I noticed what I liked, what I didn't like, what I was inspired by, and that's kind of how it happened.
There you go. Brilliant. More great information and more things to think about there. Now we're going to hear from Me PLC.
Ended up how it wasn't the initial plan.
I can work out my video.
Perfectly honest.
Hello, I'm Alison Bond from the Careers and Enterprise Company, an organisation set up to prepare and inspire young people for the fast-changing world of work. I'm here to introduce to you Me PLC, which is a project that's been developed by Birmingham Cornerstone employers for young people in Birmingham. There's lots of talk at the moment about COVID-19 and about the impact that that's having on young people and on youth employment. And you may have had to leave school unexpectedly this year and maybe not prepared for that either practically or emotionally. Or you may be going into your final year at school and wondering what that's going to hold for you. It's now more than ever important to be able to differentiate yourself and stand out from the crowd when you're looking for a job, when you're applying for university or college, or indeed when you're looking for an experience of the workplace. We only get one chance to make a first impression, and spending time now to look at who you are, understanding yourself, what you want from your future career or life, and what you can offer is really important. We hope that Me PLC is going to help you to speak more confidently and succinctly about yourself by working on your own personal brand, your skills, your qualities, and your future career aspirations. We've put together 4 short films filmed by our Cornerstone employers, Jacobs, Aston Villa Football Club, Birmingham and Solihull Mental Health Trust, EY and Lendlease, which will help you to tell your story, discover yourself, your skills and qualities and your career aspirations. We'll then ask you to summarise that into a storybook, which you can then turn into a 29-second pitch. And this is your all-important chance to make that first impression. The real skill is going to be getting all the information into 29 seconds, but our Cornerstone employers are here to help you. And we've recorded a number of pitches from other people, so you can take a look at what they've done too. Me PLC is a joint project between the Careers and Enterprise Company, the Birmingham Education Partnership and the Birmingham Cornerstone employers, along with RICEM. We really hope that you enjoy it.
Hi there, Andy Street, Mayor of the West Midlands here. My story, I am a Brummie, brought up in Northfield and Solihull. After university, went to John Lewis, moved from being a trainee to running the company. Came back here because I believed as Mayor, this place has got huge potential. My qualities, Probably great optimism, determination to win through. My tip for you, always have an attitude, have something to say, stand out from the crowd. That's how you get a great break in life.
Brilliant. Perfect. Okay.
Do you want me to come at that point, Max?
Yes, please. Let me just stop super for a second. There you go. Apologies.
Okay, so just to kind of recap on the Me PLC, this kind of goes back to one of the questions that was asked a little bit earlier about how to answer the question about tell me about yourself. And this project's been put together, and Catherine's dropped into the chat the link to this. There's an actual workbook you can work through. The mayor's, so Andy Street's video is an example of one of those pictures in 29 seconds. But the program will, the actual booklet and exercise will take you through how you pick out those really valuable bits of information, those skills, those experiences that you've gone through to put that answer together. So being put together with Cornerstone employers, but it's to help you to practice that initial one. As you saw from Jaguar Land Rover, from Emma and Chantel, one of their top questions, now that may not be the most important question, but one of the top questions was, tell us about yourself. And if you've practiced that, and you may want to record it like a lot of the employers will do through Me PLC, you can practice that and have that ready to go. So if anybody was to ask you, tell me about yourself, you've already practiced that and you have got an answer ready to go. So the link is there. Hopefully Max and Catherine, we can link that into the video when we put it on YouTube as well, so you can access it later. But there's a project in the chat and we can add the links. So Me PLC is a great way of you building the response to that style question, and it will take you through a step-by-step process, working with the employers who've recorded information for you. And there's some really good examples from apprentices and from people employed in different organizations to give you some top tips. So I'd really recommend having a look at them as well, worth working your way through.
As Mike just mentioned there about the link that we've put in the chat box, if you're not watching this live and you are watching the recording, that link will be just below the video, because you'll be watching on your YouTube, you'll see the video, and just below there will be the links there. We will have the links there for all of the things that we've talked about in the chat box, so you'll be able to see them. So that's if you're watching the recording, the link is just underneath the video to what we've been speaking about previously, and the one that Mike has just mentioned as well. Thank you for that, Mike. Right, let's hear from BJ.
Hey guys, BJ here. I'm 24 years old, a London-based entrepreneur. I run a business called Super. We help businesses find young people who are looking for employment, and we also make content and run live events. I started my journey in entrepreneurship age 14. I thought having a lemonade stand in a playground would be quite cool. So it was a tuck shop and it's called Super Tuck, and that's where I started, and I've done Super since then. So yeah. I wasn't always wanting to be an entrepreneur. I knew I wanted to own stuff. I was very inspired to potentially be an investment banker, go into finance. I was interested in coding and looking at how can I build my own Microsoft and my own Facebook and my own Bebo. The biggest route in me choosing entrepreneurship amongst everything else was spending a bit of time being a creative practitioner. I come up with an idea and sell 10,000 t-shirts, or I can go out and I could sell snacks. I could make stuff that people purchase. I love being a small business owner, and when I got alignment with that, I've never looked back. I've always preferred kind of being independent. Challenges for me were balancing finishing my A-levels and doing work like weekends at Selfridges and trying to set up a business. So trying to manage my time was a big thing for me. You can never be too young to start taking your time a bit more seriously. You got to start taking control of your day, and then when you can take control of your day, you can take control of your week and build on that. And there's a notion I use in business with my team, which is think big, but the next hour matters. It's all good having a great product, all good having a good idea, but there's something in consistent delivery of the work that really helps you get in the place to find opportunity. And then that's when people become lucky, because ultimately lucky, I don't feel I've ever been lucky in business. I think luck has been me working hard to find an opportunity and being so primed and ready that when the opportunity presents itself, you go and get it. As you guys know, and as I know, the internet is a big and beautiful place, and from young, I was always on YouTube, I was always on blogs, always understanding, seeing behind the scenes of different jobs. Double down on that curiosity, because that's what's going to enable you to decide last minute to may change the A-level you take because it might not be aligned to the new thing you found. So don't be just too married to what you know, because remember at some point you didn't know what you knew.
What a great little video to end the evening on, I would say. There's been a lot of really good information in there, a lot of good presentations, a lot of questions have been asked over the evening. So if we've got any final questions from anybody who's attended, please hit us with them now. And any final tips from anybody who has presented this evening. Mike, I can see you possibly poised to speak.
Yes, if that's all right. It's just one of the questions I wanted to cover it. One of the questions came in about, are we talking about CVs? And I think that's always a case of, there are lots of templates out there. So find one which works for you, but it's about getting that information right. What my tip would be is to make sure you revisit it regularly and you update it, especially now when employers will be interested. I think we got through the whole webinar without mentioning it, but I'm going to mention it now. They're going to be interested in what you did during COVID and during the lockdown. So from March through to now, what did you do? And reflect on that. It maybe you helped someone out, maybe a family member you helped out, but reflect on it. Whatever you're doing, your CV, update it and make it relevant. And the other thing I would always say is make sure you read your CV before you send it in to someone. Make sure it is actually relevant for that job you're sending it into. Because if you're talking about top skills, if they've mentioned in their job specification they'd like top skills, draw on those for your personal statements, or make sure they are clear at the top that they're key skills that you have. One thing that did come up today that I saw today, which I thought was really relevant today, I read a message from Alan Barrett, who's the CEO of Grenade, and he said on his LinkedIn profile today, if you're doing a CV, get someone to sense check it for you or use your spell check, because if an organization is receiving lots and lots of CVs, one of the first things that could be was actually be spelling mistakes and grammar that may well stop you. So make sure you've taken an opportunity to pass your CV through another person to read through it. Another fresh pair of eyes may pick out something that you've read through multiple times and missed out. So make sure you pass it through a fresh pair of eyes. But I don't want to take up everyone's time. If anybody else has got other questions, go for it.
I mean, I would echo with what Mike just said there. Exactly. There's tools available. Use spell check, use grammar check. And when Mike said about what did you do over COVID? This is what you did. You attended a session like this. This is really important. Is these kind of things that you want to be putting on your CV when you're thinking, well, I don't have a lot of work experience, so what do I put on? That you attended a session about your future because you wanted to take control and find out more. These are what people want to hear. This is what employers want to see that you've done with your time. So any other sessions that you may have attended that that has been run by Birmingham or Solihull, the careers hubs, put it on your CV. Other things that you've attended, put it on your CV. Virtual work experience, talk about it, put it on your CV. We have got one final question. Mahin has asked, how could you show enthusiasm to your employer without coming across as childish? If anybody has any insights on that one, jump in. But I would say that there is nothing wrong with showing enthusiasm. Coming across as childish, well, enthusiasm is, I don't know, that's a tough one, because I wouldn't penalize anybody for showing enthusiasm, because that's what I want to see, especially if it's the job I'm hiring for. And if anybody else has any insight, Rob, do I see you poised, or have I jumped the gun on that one?
No, I think you're absolutely right, Max. You know, enthusiasm is really important, and smiling, you know, will really help to show that you mean what you're talking about. But yeah, it's a tough one. I don't think you would be perceived as being childish by being enthusiastic. I think it's a, you know, something that we all have in us, at whatever age you are. So yeah, don't be afraid to hide that. I think just to make a quick point on CVs, CVs are a really personal thing, and I think, as lots of the panelists have said, you need to know the information that's on your CV so that if you're asked a question, you can talk about it. But the other thing to say is that every single person that you show your CV to and ask for an opinion about your CV will have a different point of view. There isn't one right answer. So make sure you get the fundamentals right, get the basics right, as Mike had talked about. And if your CV is working, and by which I mean if it's getting you through the door for an interview, then keep using it. If you're not having any luck at all, then ask for more feedback from friends, from family, from people like us on these kind of things, and change it. But yeah, I think there's an awful lot of information out there, as Mike said, and yeah, just keep being enthusiastic.
Absolutely. Good point about the opinions, because the more people you ask, the more opinions you will get. And at some point you have to choose which opinion you go with. And there is no perfect answer. Lana, I can see that you've just popped up. Does that mean that you would like to add something?
I just wanted to tell you a bit of advice that I received once, which is enthusiasm is infectious. And I think often in a day you can have, I've had up to 10 interviews and they can feel quite samey. I do try and give them all, and I feel like I do the attention and individuality that they deserve. But if someone is very upbeat and very chatty and smiley and asks how I am, and asks a little bit about, you know, me or the building or the company or the program, and they seem thoroughly interested, then that just makes my day that little bit better. So I'm all for it. And I just think it's one of the best things that I was ever told. So it could end up working in your favor.
Absolutely. Goes back to that point as well. How do you make yourself stand out? You know, well, you make yourself stand out by being the person who brings the infectious enthusiasm, because as an interviewer, you're more likely to remember that than the other 15 interviews that were all the same and just ran with the same course and not much enthusiasm. That's how you stand out. So it's those little things that you bring. Don't overthink it either. Just be you. You're going to be nervous. Go to an interview, practice, prepare as much as you can, but it's never going to be perfect. You will make a mistake. Something will go wrong. It's always the way. You will never have a 100% perfect interview. Even when I used to run interviews and I used to interview people, Lana, can you back me up on this one? That you've never run like a 100% perfect interview. There's always something, isn't there?
Oh God, no, I completely agree. There's no such thing as a perfect interview. We're human beings at the end of the day. We're not robots. And I think that's what makes us so beautifully unique. And some interviews that may not have gone right, I've still thought of fantastic interviews. They're just not suitable for that role. And I think in times I've actually rung back candidates and told them about other opportunities. So never not be true to yourself. It just means that that opportunity doesn't quite fit, but something else might come along.
Absolutely right. Brilliant. Well, it's 6:02. I apologize, we're 2 minutes over. It remains to say thank you to all of the companies that turned up, to all of the representatives that have come along this evening, that have put information together to put in front of you about all the opportunities that are there in Birmingham and Solihull and how to be prepared for your future. Thank you to all of you for coming along. But more importantly, thank you to all of those that are attending, all of those students that have come to better their future, to learn more, to ask questions, to engage has been really important. And we thank you for it, because without you, we've got no session to do. So thank you for coming along and being engaged and asking those questions, making us work for it as well, which is good. It's what we want to see. If you think that this was a good session, share it with people that you know that you think are going to benefit from it. Because remember, it has been recorded. It will go on YouTube. Okay. Thank you. Thank you to everybody. I don't know if anybody wants to say any final words. Otherwise, we are all good and done. It's enjoy your evenings. If anybody's American, enjoy your Thanksgiving. My wife is, so I'm about to go and enjoy a nice Thanksgiving meal. A little bit late, but we're going to enjoy it. So everybody else, enjoy your evenings. Thank you very much. Look out for other events. Look out for other insight events that happen that are going to be good for your future. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers. Bye.